Elena Vasquez walked down the long hallway that led to the Galactic Council chambers. Her shoes made soft clicking sounds on the polished metal floor. The walls around her were covered with symbols and writings from hundreds of different alien species. Each symbol told the story of a civilization that had joined the great galactic community. Earth's symbol was there too, but it was small and placed near the bottom, almost hidden behind a support beam. Elena had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now. Every day she came to these meetings, and every day she felt like a child trying to sit at the adult table. The other ambassadors barely looked at her when she spoke. When they did notice her, their expressions showed either pity or mild annoyance, like she was wasting their time. The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Elena stepped inside and saw the familiar sight of the great circular room. Hundreds of seats were arranged in rings, rising up like steps in a stadium. Each seat held a different type of alien being. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others were short and covered in fur. A few looked almost like humans, but with extra arms or strange colored eyes. Elena found her assigned seat in the back row. It was a small chair that had been added later, almost as an afterthought. She sat down and pulled out her tablet to take notes. Around her, the other ambassadors were talking in their various languages. The translation devices in her ears turned their words into English, but she could still hear the underlying tones of dismissal and superiority. Ambassador Thrak of the Korethi Empire stood up to speak. He was 7 feet tall with red skin and 4 arms. His species had been part of the galactic community for over 5,000 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds and built one of the strongest military forces in the galaxy. When Thrak spoke, others listened. "Fellow council members," Thrak began, his voice deep and commanding, "we face a crisis in the Outer Rim territories. The Zephyrian hegemony continues to expand into systems that rightfully belong to the Korathi Empire. They claim these worlds are empty, but they know we have historical claims to them." An elderly Zephyrian ambassador named Zel-9 activated his hover platform and rose to respond. The Zephyrians were an ancient race that had been among the first to achieve space travel. They looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of living gemstone that glowed with inner light. Zel-9's body pulsed with angry orange colors as he spoke. "The Korathi speak of historical claims, but history belongs to those who survive to write it," Zel-9 said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "These systems contain quantum crystal deposits that are vital for our technology. We will not allow primitive warmongers to claim them simply because their ancestors once flew through that space." Elena watched the exchange with growing concern. This was not the first time these two powers had argued about territory. The tension between the Korathi Empire and the Zephyrian hegemony had been building for months. Other council members shifted nervously in their seats. Some whispered to each other behind cupped hands or tentacles. Elena raised her hand, trying to get permission to speak. The council moderator, a blob-like creature named Gorth, looked in her direction with 3 of his 5 eyes. He seemed to consider her request for a moment, then looked away without acknowledging her. Elena put her hand down and made a note on her tablet. The argument continued for over an hour. Both sides made threats. They talked about moving fleets and protecting their interests. The quantum crystal deposits they were fighting over could power entire star systems or fuel the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Elena knew that if these two powers went to war, it would affect everyone. Finally, Ambassador Kree of the Centauran Trade Federation stood up. The Centaurans were known as peacemakers and had often helped solve disputes between other species. Kree looked like a tall, thin human, but with silver skin and large black eyes. "Perhaps we should consider involving the peacekeeping force," Kree suggested. "A neutral party could examine the claims of both sides and suggest a fair solution." Thrax. 4 arms crossed in a gesture of rejection. "The Korathi Empire does not need neutral parties to tell us what belongs to us. We have the strength to take what is ours." Zel-9's crystal body flashed bright white. "Let them try. The hegemony has technologies that these newcomers cannot imagine. We were traveling between stars when their world was still covered in ice. Elena tried to raise her hand again. This time Gorth noticed her but shook his large head. The council is discussing matters of galactic importance, he said in a tone that suggested Elena wouldn't understand such things. Perhaps the human representative could observe and learn. A few other ambassadors chuckled at this comment. Elena felt her face grow warm with embarrassment and anger, but she kept her expression neutral. She had learned that showing emotion only made the others respect her less. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Plans were made for moving trade routes away from the disputed systems. Some species began talking about which side they would support if war broke out. The smaller civilizations, those that had joined the galactic community more recently, were advised to prepare evacuation plans for their border worlds. Nobody asked Elena what Earth's position might be. Nobody suggested that humans could help with the crisis. When the topic of evacuation came up, several ambassadors glanced at Elena, with expressions that clearly said humans should probably leave the dangerous areas as soon as possible. As the meeting finally ended, Elena gathered her things and prepared to leave. Ambassador Cree approached her as the chamber emptied. "Elena," Cree said in his soft voice, "I wanted to speak with you about this situation. The Trade Federation is concerned about what might happen if the Korathi and Zephyrians actually go to war." Elena looked up at the tall silver being. Cree was one of the few ambassadors who treated her with basic respect. "I'm concerned too," she replied. "Earth has colonies in some of the systems near the disputed zone. We can't just abandon them." Kree's large eyes blinked slowly. "Perhaps you should consider doing exactly that. This is not a conflict for newer species to involve themselves in. The Korathi and Zephyrians have weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Earth's technology, while impressive for such a young civilization, would not be effective against such powers." Elena felt that familiar mix of frustration and determination that came from being constantly underestimated. "Earth has been part of the galactic community for almost 200 years, she said. "We've contributed to trade, science, and peacekeeping efforts. We deserve to have our voice heard on matters that affect us." Cree nodded politely, but Elena could see in his expression that he thought she was being naive. "Of course Earth deserves respect," he said. "But there is a difference between having a voice and having the power to back up that voice. In conflicts like this, species survive by knowing their limitations." After Cree left, Elena stood alone in the nearly empty chamber. The cleaning robots had already begun their work, sweeping away the debris from the day's session. She looked up at the great dome ceiling that showed a holographic display of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems twinkled in the artificial sky. Earth's system was marked with a small blue dot near the edge of what was considered civilized space. Elena thought about what Cree had said. The Centauran was right that Earth's known military capabilities were limited compared to the great powers. Humanity's ships were considered adequate for patrol duties and cargo transport, but they wouldn't last long against Korathi battle cruisers or Zephyrian crystal destroyers. But Elena knew something that Cree and the others didn't. She knew that what they saw of human technology was not everything humanity had to offer. The ships and weapons that Earth displayed to the galaxy were real, but they were not the best that human science could produce. Elena had clearance to know about projects that were kept secret from the galactic community. She knew about research facilities hidden in asteroid fields and weapons testing that happened in empty systems far from trade routes. The question was whether humanity should reveal more of its capabilities now or continue to let the galaxy think of Earth as a minor power that needed protection from the big players. Elena made her way back to the human embassy, a modest building in the diplomatic quarter of the space station. Her assistant, James Park, was waiting for her with a stack of reports and a concerned expression. "How did it go?" James asked as Elena entered her office. "About as expected," Elena replied, settling into her chair. "The Korathi and Zephyrians are moving closer to war, and everyone thinks humans should run away and hide until it's over." James frowned. "Maybe they have a point. If this turns into a full-scale conflict, our outer colonies could be in real danger." Elena looked at him carefully. James had been her assistant for 2 years, but he didn't have the security clearance to know about humanity's hidden capabilities. To him, as to most humans, Earth really was a minor power that had to be careful not to anger the galaxy's giants. James, Elena said slowly, what would you say if I told you that Earth might have more options than the galactic community realizes? James looked confused. I'd say I hope you're right, but I don't see how. Our fleet has maybe 50 ships that could handle serious combat. The Korathi Empire has thousands of ships, each one more powerful than our best destroyer. Elena nodded. The official numbers James cited were accurate. 50 ships was indeed all that Earth publicly acknowledged having in its military fleet. The weapons and defenses on those ships were also exactly what the galactic community expected from a civilization of Earth's apparent level, but Elena knew about the other ships. The ones built in secret shipyards using technology that would surprise even the ancient Zephyrians. She knew about weapon systems that could do things the galaxy's military experts said were impossible. She knew about defensive technologies that could make a ship nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. The question was whether it was time to let the galaxy know these things existed. Elena's secure communication device chimed softly. She activated it and saw that she had a priority message from Earth. The sender was Admiral Sarah Chun, head of Human Strategic Command. Elena had met Admiral Chun only once, but she knew the woman was responsible for humanity's most classified military programs. The message was brief. Ambassador Vasquez, please prepare for possible changes in Earth's diplomatic posture. New instructions may be coming soon. Maintain current protocol until further notice. Elena stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. The wording was careful and vague, but she understood what it meant. Earth's leadership was considering whether to reveal more of humanity's true capabilities. The decision would depend on how the current crisis developed. Elena looked out her office window at the vast space station that housed the Galactic Council. Ships from dozens of species moved through the docking bays like insects around a hive. Each species thought they understood their place in the galactic order. Each believed they knew which civilizations were strong and which were weak very soon. Elena realized some of those beliefs might be proven very wrong. The war began on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Elena was in her office reviewing trade reports when the emergency alarms started sounding throughout the space station. The piercing wail meant only one thing: active military conflict had been detected somewhere in the galaxy. James burst through her office door without knocking, his face pale with worry. Ambassador, you need to see the news feeds. The Korathi just attacked a Zephyrian mining operation in the Kepler 442 system. Elena quickly activated her main display screen. The Galactic News Network was showing grainy footage from a mining station's security cameras. The images were chaotic and hard to follow, but Elena could see the distinctive red ships of the Korathi, fleet firing energy beams at crystal structures that must have been Zephyrian facilities. The news anchor, a multi-tentacled being from the Aquatic Federation, spoke in urgent tones. Initial reports suggest that at least 12 Zephyrian ships were destroyed in the surprise attack. The mining station itself has been completely obliterated. This represents the first direct military action between major powers in over 300 years. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had known this was coming, but seeing it actually happen was different. Wars between galactic powers didn't stay small. They had a way of spreading like fire through dry grass. Her secure communication device chimed. Another message from Admiral Chun on Earth. This one was longer than the previous day's brief note. Situation developing as predicted. Council will likely issue evacuation orders for minor species within 24 hours. Earth's official response will be to express concern and offer humanitarian aid. Do not deviate from this position until you receive Code 7 authorization. Monitor all communications carefully. Changes may come quickly. Elena read the message twice before deleting it. Code 7 authorization was something she had heard about but never experienced. It meant that Earth's most classified military assets might be put into play. The thought both excited and terrified her. James was still, standing by her desk, watching the news coverage with growing alarm. "This is bad, isn't it?" he asked. "I mean, really bad." Before Elena could answer, her regular communication system activated. The face of Ambassador Cree appeared on the screen. The Centauran looked more worried than Elena had ever seen him. "Elena, I hope you're watching the news," Cree said without any greeting. "The Trade Federation is calling an emergency council session in 2 hours. We need to discuss immediate protective measures for all non-aligned species." Elena nodded. "I'll be there." "Do we know how the Zephyrians are responding?" Kree's silver skin seemed to shimmer with anxiety. "Their fleet is mobilizing. Intelligence reports suggest they're moving at least 200 ships toward Korathi space. This could escalate very quickly." The emergency council session was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. The great chamber was filled with panicked voices speaking in dozens of languages. The translation devices were having trouble keeping up with the overlapping conversations. Some ambassadors were shouting demands for action. Others were making frantic calls to their homeworlds. Gorth, the council moderator, was struggling to maintain order. His 5 eyes kept moving in different directions as he tried to track multiple conversations at once. When he finally managed to get everyone's attention, his voice was strained with stress. "Fellow council members," Gorth announced, "we face a crisis that threatens the stability of our entire galactic community. The conflict between the Korathi Empire and the Zephyrian hegemony has moved beyond diplomatic protest to active warfare." A new voice interrupted him. Ambassador Thrak of the Korathi Empire had arrived, flanked by 4 guards in combat armor. His red skin was darker than usual, and his 4 arms moved in aggressive gestures as he spoke. "The Korathi Empire regrets that the Zephyrians forced us to take military action," Thrak declared. "But we will not allow crystal thieves to steal what belongs to us. The mining operation in Kepler 442 was built on Korathi territory without permission. We had every right to remove the trespassers." The Zephyrian response came from Zel 9, whose crystal body was now pulsing with angry red light. "The Korathi speak of rights they invented yesterday. The hegemony has been mining quantum crystals for 10,000 years. We will not be bullied by these metal-wielding barbarians." Elena watched the exchange with growing dread. Neither side seemed interested in backing down. If anything, they appeared to be looking for excuses to escalate the conflict further. Ambassador Cree stood up on his platform. "Perhaps we can arrange a ceasefire while neutral parties examine the territorial claims." "There will be no ceasefire," Thrak interrupted. "The Korathi Empire is prepared to defend all of our legitimate territories by any means necessary." Zel 9's crystal body flashed white-hot. "Let them try. The hegemony has weapons that will turn their ships into space dust." Elena tried to raise her hand to speak, but once again Gorth ignored her. Instead, he called for input from the major powers. The Aquatic Federation expressed concern about trade route disruptions. The Silicon Collective worried about the quantum crystal shortage that would result from destroyed mining operations. The insectoid swarm requested permission to relocate their colonies away from potential battle zones. After 3 hours of increasingly heated debate, the council reached a decision that surprised no one. All developing species would be advised to evacuate their populations from any system within 50 light-years of the disputed zone. The more established civilizations would move their valuable assets to secure locations and wait to see which side emerged victorious. Elena found herself grouped with the developing species, along with representatives from dozens of other civilizations that had joined the galactic community within the last few centuries. They were all expected to run away and let the big powers settle their differences. As the session ended, Elena noticed something that made her pause. Several of the major power ambassadors were looking at her with expressions she hadn't seen before, not dismissal or pity, but something closer to curiosity. Ambassador Cree approached her as she gathered her things. "Elena, I wanted to speak with you privately," Cree said. The Trade Federation has been monitoring communications from various species as this crisis develops. We've noticed some unusual activity in human space. Elena kept her expression neutral. What kind of activity? Energy signatures that don't match your known technology. Ship movements that seem more organized than a simple evacuation. Resource allocations that suggest preparation rather than retreat. Cree paused. The Federation is wondering if Earth might have capabilities that haven't been widely shared with the galactic community. Elena felt her heart rate increase, but she maintained her diplomatic composure. Earth takes the safety of our colonies very seriously. We're making whatever preparations we feel are necessary. Cree studied her face carefully. Of course, but if Earth does have additional resources available, this might be the time to consider sharing them with the Council. Unity in crisis often leads to stronger alliances afterward. Elena nodded politely. I'll pass your thoughts along to my government. But as she walked back to the human embassy, Elena's mind was racing. If the Centaurans had noticed unusual activity in human space, others probably had too. The secret was becoming harder to keep. James was waiting for her with more reports from Earth and the outer colonies. Ambassador, we're getting requests for evacuation assistance from 3 different human settlements in the border systems. They want to know if Earth is sending ships to help them relocate. Elena looked at the requests. The colonies in question were small farming and mining operations with maybe 10,000 people total. Under normal circumstances, Earth would indeed send evacuation ships, but these weren't normal circumstances. What's the official word from Earth Defense Command? Elena asked. James checked his notes. They say evacuation ships are being prepared, but no launch schedule has been announced yet. They're still assessing the situation. Elena knew this was code. Earth Defense Command was waiting to see if the hidden fleet would be revealed. If humanity decided to show its true military strength, there would be no need for evacuations. If they chose to maintain the secret, then yes, the colonies would need to be moved to safety. Her secure communicator chimed again. This time the message was from someone Elena didn't recognize, Commander Lisa Zhang of something called Deep Space Operations. Elena had never heard of that department, but the message carried the highest possible security clearance. Ambassador Vasquez, you are authorized to begin preliminary diplomatic preparations for a potential shift in Earth's strategic posture. Continue current protocols, but be ready for rapid changes. Do not acknowledge this message. Elena stared at the words on her screen. Preliminary diplomatic preparations could mean a lot of things, but in the current context, it probably meant getting ready to explain to the galaxy why Earth had been hiding its true capabilities. Over the next 2 days, the war escalated exactly as Elena had feared it would. The Zephyrians launched a counterattack against a Korathi supply depot, destroying 6 ships and a space station. The Korathi responded by attacking a Zephyrian colony world, forcing the evacuation of 2 million crystal beings. The galactic community watched in horror as 2 of the most powerful civilizations in known space began tearing each other apart. Trade routes were disrupted. Neutral ships were caught in crossfire. Refugee camps started forming on any world that could accommodate displaced populations. Elena attended emergency council session after emergency council session, watching as the other ambassadors became more desperate and afraid. The major powers were choosing sides. The Aquatic Federation announced support for the Zephyrians. The Silicon Collective pledged aid to the Korathi. The insectoid swarm declared neutrality, but began moving their ships away from any potential battle zones. Through it all, Elena noticed that more and more ambassadors were looking at her with those curious expressions. Whispered conversations stopped when she walked by. During breaks and council sessions, small groups of diplomats would huddle together, glancing in her direction and speaking in low voices. Ambassador Cree confirmed her suspicions when he approached her after the 4th emergency session. Elena, there are rumors circulating about unusual human activities. Some species are saying that Earth might be preparing for something other than evacuation. Elena had been expecting this conversation. What kind of rumors? Reports of energy Signatures in human space that don't match any known technology. Observations of ships that appear to be using advanced propulsion systems. Intelligence intercepts suggesting that Earth might have military capabilities that far exceed what you've shown the galactic community. Elena looked around the chamber, noting that several other ambassadors were within hearing distance and clearly listening to the conversation. That's an interesting theory. What do you think? Kree's large black eyes studied her face. I think that if such capabilities existed, now would be an excellent time to reveal them. The galaxy needs all the help it can get to stop this war before it destroys everything we've built together. Elena nodded slowly. I'll be sure to pass that message along to my government. That night, Elena sat in her office long after James had gone home. She stared out the window at the space around the station, watching as more and more ships arrived carrying refugees from the war zones. The conflict was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. 3 more star systems had reported fighting. Civilian casualties were mounting into the millions. Her secure communicator chimed one final time. The message was brief, but it made Elena's hands shake as she read it. Code 7 authorization approved. Prepare for full revelation. Timeline, 48 hours maximum, make ready. Elena deleted the message and leaned back in her chair. In 2 days, everything would change. The galaxy was about to learn that they had been very, very wrong about humanity's place in the cosmic order. She just hoped they were ready for the truth. The attack on New Terra came without warning on the 6th day of the war. Elena was sleeping when the emergency alarms woke her at 3 a.m, station time. She grabbed her communicator and saw dozens of urgent messages flooding in. From across human space, James was calling her on the regular channel, his voice shaking with panic. Ambassador, you need to see this immediately. The Karathi just attacked New Terra. They hit the colony with everything they had. Elena threw on her clothes and rushed to her office. The main display was already showing news feeds from the human colony world. The images were devastating. Karathi battle cruisers hung in orbit around the planet like predatory birds. Energy beams lanced down from space, turning cities into burning craters. The colony's small defense platforms were already destroyed, their wreckage floating in the planet's atmosphere. The news anchor was speaking in urgent tones. Initial reports suggest that the Karathi Empire has launched a surprise attack on the human colony of New Terra. The colony's population of 400,000 appears to be defenseless against the assault. This marks the first time in the current conflict that a neutral species has been directly targeted. Elena felt sick to her stomach. New Terra was one of humanity's most successful colonies, a farming world that supplied food to a dozen other human settlements. The people there were scientists, farmers, and teachers. They had no military training and no weapons capable of fighting off a fleet of warships. Her secure communicator was flashing with an incoming message. Elena activated and saw the face of Admiral Sarah Chun. The woman's expression was grim, but determined. Ambassador Vasquez, the attack on New Terra changes everything. You are now authorized to implement Protocol 7 in full. Prepare the galactic community for immediate revelation of human military capabilities. The time for hiding is over. Elena stared at the Admiral's image. What about the colony? Can we save them? Admiral Chun's expression softened slightly. Fleet Command is already responding. You'll see what I mean very soon. Your job is to handle the diplomatic aftermath. Make sure the galaxy understands that humanity is no longer asking for permission. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with the weight of what was about to happen. She looked at the news feeds again, watching as Karathi ships continued their bombardment of New Terra. The colony's governor was sending desperate pleas for help to anyone who would listen. But the nearest Galactic Council peacekeeping force was 3 days away, and the other major powers were too busy with their own preparations to spare ships for rescuing a minor species. Elena activated her communicator and called an emergency meeting of all human diplomatic staff. Within 30 minutes, her office was filled with every human representative on the station. James, her assistant, stood next to 3 other embassy workers. All of them looked terrified and confused. I need all of you to listen very carefully, Elena began. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. In the next few hours, you're going to see things that will change everything. You thought you knew about Earth's military capabilities. James raised his hand hesitantly. What do you mean? Are we sending ships to help New Terra? Elena nodded. We're sending ships, but they're not the ships the galaxy knows about. For the past 200 years, humanity has been hiding the true extent of our technology. The fleet that the galactic community thinks is our entire military force is actually just a small fraction of what we really have. The room fell silent. Elena could see the disbelief on their faces. To them, as to most humans, Earth really was a minor power struggling to find its place among the galactic giants. I know this is hard to believe, Elena continued, but in a few hours the galaxy is going to learn that humanity has capabilities that no one suspected. Our job is to help them understand why we kept this secret and what it means for the future. Before anyone could ask more questions, Elena's regular communicator activated. The face of Ambassador Kree appeared on the screen, and he looked more frightened than Elena had ever seen him. Elena, the Trade Federation is calling an immediate emergency session. The attack on New Terra has shocked everyone. Several species are demanding that the Council take action to protect neutral colonies. Elena nodded. I'll be there in 10 minutes. As she prepared to leave, Elena's secure communicator chimed one last time. The message was from Admiral Chun and contained only 2 words. It begins. The emergency council session was chaos. Every ambassador was speaking at once, their voices creating a wall of sound that the translation devices couldn't handle. Elena could see the fear in their faces. If the Korathi were willing to attack neutral colonies, then no one was safe. Ambassador Thrak of the Korathi Empire stood at his platform, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of defiance. The Korathi Empire regrets the necessity of this action, he announced. But the human colony was providing food supplies to Zephyrian military forces. This made them a legitimate military target. The accusation was completely false, and Elena knew it. New Terra sold food to anyone who could pay for it, but they had no military contracts with any species. The attack was simply the Korathi sending a message that they would destroy anyone who got in their way. Ambassador Zel-9 of the Zephyrian hegemony responded with crystal body flashing angry colors. The Korathi seek to drag innocent species into their war of aggression. The hegemony calls for immediate sanctions against this criminal empire. Gorth, the council moderator, was trying desperately to maintain order. Fellow council members, we must find a way to protect neutral colonies from this expanding conflict. The peacekeeping force is already stretched too thin to provide adequate coverage. Elena tried to raise her hand to speak, but once again Gorth ignored her. Several other ambassadors began proposing solutions. The Aquatic Federation suggested moving all neutral colonies to protected systems. The Silicon Collective recommended suspending trade with both warring parties. The insectoid swarm called for the formation of a larger peacekeeping force. None of their suggestions would help New Terra. The colony was under attack right now, and by the time any of these proposals could be implemented, everyone on the planet would be dead. That's when the first reports started coming in. A minor functionary from the Galactic Communications Center rushed into the chamber carrying a portable display unit. He whispered something urgent to Gorth, who suddenly went very still. All 5 of the moderator's eyes focused on the display. Screen. Fellow council members, Gorth announced in a shaking voice. I'm receiving reports of unknown ships appearing in the New Terra system. The vessels appear to be human in origin, but they don't match any known human ship designs. Elena felt her heart start racing. This was it. This was the moment everything changed. The main display screen in the chamber activated, showing a live feed from a news ship that had been covering the attack on New Terra. The image showed the Korathi fleet still bombarding the planet's surface. But now there were other ships in the system. Ships that looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. They were sleek and dark, almost black, with smooth curves that seemed to bend light around them. They moved through space with an impossible grace, accelerating and turning, in ways that defied the known laws of physics. Most shocking of all, they seemed to phase in and out of reality, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. "What are those things?" someone whispered in the chamber. Elena stood up from her seat in the back row. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't wait for permission to speak. Her voice carried clearly through the sudden silence in the chamber. "Those are human ships," she announced, "and they're here to end this attack." Every eye in the chamber turned to look at her. "Ambassador." Thrak's red skin was growing darker with confusion and anger. "Impossible. Humans don't have ships like that. We know your entire fleet composition." Elena walked down from her back row seat toward the center of the chamber. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was happening, she felt strangely calm. "You know what we wanted you to know," she said simply. "What you're seeing now is a small sample of humanity's actual military capabilities." The display screen showed the mysterious human ships approaching the Korathi fleet. The Korathi commander apparently decided to treat them as a threat, because the battle cruisers turned their weapons away from the planet and began firing at the newcomers. The energy beams that could level cities passed harmlessly through the human ships, as if they weren't even there. The ships seemed to exist in a state between solid matter and pure energy, becoming intangible when attacked but somehow still able to move and maneuver. "This is impossible," Ambassador Zel-9 declared, his crystal body flashing with confused colors. "No species has technology that can phase matter in and out of existence." Elena smiled for the first time in days. "You're right. No species you know about has that technology." On the screen, the human ships were beginning their counterattack. But they didn't use energy beams or missile weapons like every other species in the galaxy. Instead, they seemed to reach out with invisible hands and simply stop the Korathi ships. One by one, the massive battle cruisers found themselves unable to move. Their engines were still running, their power systems were still active, but they were frozen in space as if held by giant invisible clamps. The Korathi crews tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. Then one of the human ships moved closer to the largest Korathi vessel. A beam of soft blue light extended from the human ship to the battle cruiser. The light didn't seem to cause any damage, but suddenly every system on the Korathi ship went dark. The massive vessel became nothing more than a lifeless chunk of metal floating in space. Within 10 minutes, the entire Korathi fleet had been neutralized. Not destroyed, not damaged, but simply turned off like machines that had been unplugged. The crews were still alive, but their ships were completely powerless. The chamber was absolutely silent as everyone watched the impossible scene on the display. Elena looked around at the shocked faces of her fellow ambassadors. These were beings from species that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years, and they were seeing their entire understanding of military power proven wrong in real time. Captain Marcus Chin's voice came through the communication system, broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in the new Terra system could hear it. His words were calm and professional, but they carried an unmistakable tone of authority. "This is Captain Chun of the Human Strategic Response Fleet. The attack on New Terra is now terminated. All Korathi vessels will remain powered down until further notice. Any attempt to restart your systems or continue hostile actions will result in the permanent disabling of your ships." Captain Chun paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a warning that sent chills through everyone listening. "This is your only warning. Humanity will no longer tolerate attacks on neutral worlds or innocent populations. Any species that chooses to target human colonies or civilians will face the full response of our military forces. We have been patient for 200 years, but our patience has limits." Ambassador Thrak found his voice first. "This is some kind of trick. Humans cannot have technology this advanced. Where did these ships come from?" Elena looked directly at the Korathi ambassador. "They came from Earth, just like the hundreds of other ships we have in reserve. Just like the defensive systems we've placed around every human colony. Just like the weapons platforms we've hidden throughout this galaxy to protect it from threats you don't even know exist." The implications of her words hit the chamber like a physical blow. If humanity had been hiding this level of technology for 2 centuries, what else had they been hiding? What other secrets were there? Ambassador Cree was staring at Elena with something approaching awe. How long? He asked quietly. How long have you had capabilities like this? Elena met his gaze steadily. Since before we joined the galactic community. We learned very early that being underestimated was the greatest tactical advantage we could possibly have. While you all focused on energy weapons and shield technology, we took a different path. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. We developed ships that exist partially outside normal space-time. We created weapons that can rewrite the basic laws of physics in localized areas. She gestured toward the display screen, where the human ships were now helping to evacuate wounded civilians from New Terra's surface. What you just saw was not our most advanced technology. It was just enough to stop an attack on innocent people. The chamber erupted in voices as every ambassador tried to speak at once. Some demanded explanations. Others called for immediate military alliances with humanity. A few seemed to be trying to calculate whether their own species could defend against these mysterious human capabilities. But Elena was no longer listening to them. She was watching the display screen where her people were saving lives and protecting the innocent. For the first time since becoming Earth's ambassador, she felt proud to represent her species in the galactic community. The age of humanity hiding in the shadows was over. Now the galaxy would have to adjust to the reality that the species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers were actually the most technologically advanced civilization any of them had ever encountered. Elena just hoped they were ready for what came next. The interrogation began 3 hours after the New Terra incident. Elena found herself sitting alone in a secure conference room deep within the Galactic Council station, facing representatives from every major power in the galaxy. The room's walls were lined with recording devices and energy dampeners designed to prevent any information from leaving without permission. Ambassador Cree sat directly across from her, his silver skin pale with stress. To his left was Ambassador Thrak, whose red skin had darkened to almost black with anger and humiliation. Ambassador Zel-9's crystal body flickered with confused colors that shifted every few seconds. Representatives from a dozen other species filled the remaining seats, all of them staring at Elena with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. General Vox of the Galactic Defense Force leaned forward, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. Ambassador Vasquez, we need answers. The ships that appeared at New Terra use technology that should not exist. Our scientists have analyzed the sensor data, and nothing makes sense. Elena remained calm, her hands folded on the table in front of her. She had been prepared for this moment for years. What would you like to know? Everything, Thrak snapped. How long have humans possessed this technology? How many ships do you have? What other capabilities are you hiding? Elena looked around the room at the assembled representatives. These were beings from civilizations that had controlled galactic politics for millennia. They were used to being the most advanced, the most powerful, the ones who made decisions for everyone else. Now they were learning that a species they had dismissed as primitive had been, watching them like adults watching children play with toys. Dr. Sarah Kim will be joining us shortly to provide technical details, Elena said. But I can give you the basic history. Earth began developing what we call quantum manipulation technology about 50 years before we made first contact with the galactic community. She paused, letting that sink in. By the time we joined the Galactic Council, we already had ships that could phase between dimensions, weapons that could rewrite local physics, and defensive systems that made conventional attacks useless. But we chose to hide these capabilities. Admiral Zara of the Aquatic Federation spoke up, her gills fluttering with emotion. Why? Why would you hide such advances? You could have been a major power from the beginning, Elena smiled sadly. Because we learned something important during our first contact experiences. Every species we met assumed that whoever had the biggest weapons was automatically in charge. We watched how the galactic community worked, and we realized that being seen As powerful would make us a target. A target for what? General Vox demanded. For everyone, Elena replied simply. The strong species would see us as a threat to be eliminated. The weak species would expect us to solve all their problems. We would become either conquerors or policemen, whether we wanted to or not. So we chose a third option. Dr. Sarah Kim entered the room at that moment, flanked by two human guards in simple uniforms. The guards looked ordinary enough, but Elena noticed how every alien representative tensed when they walked in. After what had happened at New Terra, no one was taking any chances with human capabilities. Dr. Kim was a small woman in her 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the head of humanity's most classified military research programs. She sat down next to Elena and opened a datapad. Gentlemen, ladies, and others, Dr. Kim began politely, I understand you have questions about human technology. I'll do my best to explain things in terms you can understand. Thrak leaned forward aggressively. We want to know exactly what capabilities humans possess. How many ships like the ones at New Terra do you have? Dr. Kim consulted her datapad. The ships you observed represent our oldest technology, developed about 230 years ago. We currently have approximately 1,500 vessels of that class or better distributed throughout human space. The room fell silent. 1,500 ships with the technology they had witnessed would be enough to defeat any fleet in the galaxy with ease. Ambassador Zell9's crystal body flashed bright white. Impossible. The industrial capacity required to build such a fleet would be massive. We monitor all major construction projects in human space. Dr. Kim smiled gently. You monitor construction in normal space? Most of our shipyards exist in pocket dimensions created specifically for that purpose. We can build entire fleets without anyone detecting so much as a single energy signature. General Vox's mandibles clicked rapidly. What about weapons? The ships at New Terra didn't use energy beams or projectiles. How did they disable our vessels? Quantum field manipulation, Dr. Kim explained. We learned how to reach into the quantum foundations of matter and simply turn things off. Every atom in your ships is held together by quantum forces. We can temporarily disrupt those forces in very specific ways. She touched her datapad and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed a simplified diagram of quantum particle interactions. For example, we can make matter temporarily non-solid by shifting it slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. This is why your weapons passed harmlessly through our ships. We can also disrupt the quantum processes that allow electrical currents to flow, which is how we shut down your power systems without causing any permanent damage. Admiral Zara was staring at the display in amazement. The energy requirements for such manipulation must be enormous. How do you power these systems? Dr. Kim touched the datapad again, and the display changed to show what looked like a small star contained in a metallic sphere. 0-point energy extraction, we learned how to tap directly into the quantum vacuum itself. Each of our ships carries what is essentially a miniature universe as its power source. The implications hit the room like a physical blow. A civilization that could create pocket universes for power sources and shipyards was so far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen that it redefined what was possible. Ambassador Kree found his voice first. How did you develop such technology so quickly? Most species require thousands of years to make advances like this. Elena and Dr. Kim exchanged a look. This was the part they had been dreading. The truth is, Elena said carefully, humans didn't develop this technology entirely on our own. We had help. Help from whom? Thrak demanded. Dr. Kim activated her datapad once more, and the holographic display changed to show a star map of the galaxy. But this wasn't any star map the aliens recognized. It showed regions of space that were supposedly empty, marked with symbols indicating hidden installations in defensive positions. For the past 300 years, the galaxy has been under attack, Dr. Kim explained. Not from any species you know about, but from automated war machines left behind by a civilization that died out millions of years ago. These machines activate periodically and attempt to exterminate all organic life they encounter. The room was completely silent now. Every representative was staring at the display with growing horror. The attacks come in waves, roughly every 500 years, Dr. Kim continued. The last major assault happened about 200 years before humans achieved spaceflight. It was devastating. Entire star systems were wiped clean of life. Billions died. She touched the datapad and the display zoomed in on specific sectors. The surviving species of that era realized they needed better defenses. Some of them shared their most advanced technology with emerging civilizations that showed promise. Humanity was one of the species chosen to receive this knowledge. Ambassador Zell-9's crystal body was pulsing with rapid color changes. You're saying that humans have been acting as guardians? Protecting the galaxy from threats we don't even know exist? Elena nodded. The ancient machines are programmed to target the most advanced civilizations first. Your fleets, your weapons, your shields, all of it uses energy signatures that the machines recognize as threats. But human technology is based on different principles. We're essentially invisible to their targeting systems. Dr. Kim brought up another display showing battle reports and incident logs. Over the past 2 centuries, we've detected and neutralized 17 separate incursions by these ancient machines. Most were small scout units, but 3 were full battle fleets. None of them ever reached inhabited space because we intercepted them in the void between stars. General Vox was studying the data with growing amazement. You've been fighting a secret war to protect us? For 200 years? Not just us, Elena clarified. There are other guardian species scattered throughout the galaxy, but most of them operate differently than we do. They prefer to remain completely hidden. Humanity chose to integrate with galactic society while maintaining our protective role. Admiral Zara leaned back in her chair, looking overwhelmed. This changes everything? The entire power structure of the galaxy, our understanding of technology, our military strategies, none of it matters if there are ancient war machines out there. Dr. Kim nodded grimly. The next major wave is predicted to arrive within the next 50 years. When it does, every conventional fleet in the galaxy will be helpless against them. But humanity and our fellow guardians have been preparing. She changed the display to show defensive installations throughout the galaxy. Hidden weapon platforms, sensor networks, and automated defense systems were scattered across hundreds of star systems. We've spent 2 centuries building a defensive network that spans the entire galaxy. The ancient machines will find a very different galaxy waiting for them when they return. Thrax's forearms were trembling with a mixture of rage and humiliation. So humans have been babysitting us? Protecting us like children who can't protect themselves? Elena met his gaze steadily. We've been doing what we felt was necessary to preserve life in the galaxy. Your wars, your politics, your territorial disputes, they're all irrelevant if everyone is dead. She gestured toward the display showing the defensive network. But the situation has changed. The current war between the Korathi and Zephyrians is disrupting our defensive preparations. Refugee movements are interfering with our sensor networks. Military buildups are creating energy signatures that might attract the ancient machines early. Dr. Kim leaned forward, her kind expression becoming serious. That's why we revealed ourselves now. We need the current conflict to end immediately. Not because we care about your territorial disputes, but because your war is putting the entire galaxy at risk. The room was quiet for a long moment as the assembled representatives tried to process what they had learned. Everything they thought they knew about galactic politics had just been turned upside down. Ambassador Cree was the first to speak. What do you need from us? Elena smiled for the first time since the interrogation began. An immediate ceasefire between all warring parties. Full cooperation with human defensive preparations. And most importantly, the understanding that humanity is no longer asking for permission to do what we think is necessary. She stood up from her chair and Dr. Kim followed suit. The age of human secrecy is over. From now on, we'll be taking a more active role in galactic affairs. The question is whether you'll work with us or against us." Elena looked around the room at the shocked faces of the galactic community's most powerful representatives. "Because with or without your cooperation, we're going to do whatever it takes to keep everyone alive when the real enemy arrives." As Elena and Dr. Kim left the conference room, the assembled ambassadors sat in stunned silence. The galaxy they thought they knew had just revealed itself to be an illusion. The species they had dismissed as insignificant newcomers were actually the only thing standing between them and extinction. And now humanity was done hiding in the shadows. The real question was what they planned to do next. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Defense Station, watching as ships from across the galaxy worked together in ways that would have been impossible before the revelation. Karathi battlecruisers flew in formation with Zephyrian crystal ships. Human vessels phased in and out of normal space, their crews training alien officers in quantum manipulation techniques. The sight still amazed her every day. The war between the Karathi Empire and the Zephyrian hegemony had ended within hours of Dr. Kim's presentation to the galactic representatives. When faced with the truth about the ancient machines and humanity's guardian role, both sides had immediately agreed to a ceasefire. The territorial disputes that had seemed so important suddenly became meaningless when compared to the threat of galactic extinction. James walked up beside her, carrying a datapad full of reports from the morning briefings. He looked older now, his face marked by the stress of helping to coordinate humanity's transition from hidden guardians to open protectors. The revelation had been as shocking to most humans as it had been to the aliens. The latest intelligence. "Reports are in," James said, handing her the datapad. "Our deep space sensors have detected 3 more ancient machine scout units heading toward the outer rim. The response fleets are already moving to intercept them." Elena nodded as she read through the reports. The ancient enemy had indeed begun to stir, just as humanity's experts had predicted. Over the past 6 months, dozens of automated war machines had been detected and destroyed by the combined galactic defense network. Each victory proved that the new alliance was working. "Any word from the Andromeda expedition?" Elena asked. James smiled. "They found another guardian species. The architects have been protecting their own galaxy for over 10,000 years. They're willing to share intelligence and coordinate defenses." Elena felt a surge of hope. The discovery that guardian species existed in other galaxies meant that the threat wasn't limited to their own corner of the universe. But it also meant that the ancient enemy was far more widespread than anyone had imagined. Admiral Sarachan approached them from across the observation deck. The woman who had once hidden in the shadows of Earth's secret military command was now the openly acknowledged commander of the Galactic Defense Force. Her uniform bore the insignia of all the major galactic powers, symbolizing the unity that humanity had helped create. "Elena, we need to discuss the council meeting," Admiral Chun said. "Some of the newer alliance members are still having trouble accepting human authority." Elena sighed. The transition hadn't been completely smooth, while the major powers had quickly accepted humanity's role as protectors. Many smaller species struggled with the idea that the galaxy's weakest-looking civilization was actually its strongest. Pride and prejudice died hard, even in the face of extinction. "What's the latest to complaint?" Elena asked. Admiral Chun consulted her own datapad. "The Rigelian Confederation is questioning why humans get to decide where defensive installations are placed. They claim we're using the ancient machine threat as an excuse to establish military bases throughout their territory." Elena shook her head. Some species seemed determined to view everything through the lens of traditional power politics, even when their survival was at stake. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," Admiral Chun replied. "That we've been placing defensive installations in their space for over a century without them knowing it. The only difference now is that we're asking permission instead of just doing it." James chuckled despite himself. "I bet that went over well." "About as well as you'd expect," Admiral Chun said. "But they'll come around." "They always do once they See the sensor data from the ancient machine attacks. Elena looked out at the fleet formations again. The sight of former enemies working together still filled her with amazement. Ambassador Thrak had become one of humanity's strongest supporters after witnessing what the ancient machines could do to an unprepared world. The Karathi Empire's entire military doctrine had been restructured around human quantum manipulation. Principles. Ambassador Zel-9 had been even more dramatic in his conversion. The ancient Zephyrion had declared that humanity represented the fulfillment of old prophecies about guardians from the stars. His species now worshipped human defenders as living gods, which made Elena deeply uncomfortable but proved useful in maintaining the alliance. Speaking of the council meeting, Elena said, "Have you reviewed the proposal for the new command structure?" Admiral Chun nodded. "The Joint Chiefs have approved it. Human Strategic Command will maintain overall authority for ancient machine threats, but routine galactic security will be handled by rotating councils from all member species." It was a compromise that Elena had fought hard to achieve. Humanity had the technology and experience to lead the fight against the ancient machines, but they didn't want to become permanent dictators of the galaxy. The new structure would allow other species to maintain their dignity while ensuring that humanity could act quickly when NECESSARY Dr. Kim joined their group, carrying a sealed case that Elena recognized as containing classified research data. The elderly scientist had become something of a celebrity since the revelation, but she still preferred working in her laboratory to making public appearances. "I have the latest test results from the new weapon systems," Dr. Kim announced. "The Karathi energy amplifiers integrated with our quantum disruptors have exceeded all expectations. We can now disable ancient machine units from 3 times the previous range." Elena felt another surge of hope. The combination of human quantum technology with alien engineering innovations was producing results that neither side could have achieved alone. The galaxy's diverse scientific traditions were proving to be humanity's greatest asset in preparing for the coming war. "What about the other projects?" Admiral Chen asked. Dr. Kim opened her case and pulled out a small device that looked like a crystalline flower. "The Zephyrian consciousness transfer technology has been successfully combined with our quantum computers. We can now back up and restore the minds of key personnel even if their bodies are destroyed." She held up another device, this one resembling a metallic spider. "The insectoid swarm's hive mind coordination protocols have been adapted for our fleet communications. Our ships can now operate as a single organism across entire star systems." Elena marveled at the tiny devices in Dr. Kim's hands. Each one represented a breakthrough that would have taken centuries to achieve in isolation. The forced cooperation had accelerated technological development at an unprecedented rate. "Any word on Project Lighthouse?" Elena asked. Dr. Kim's expression became serious. "The dimensional beacon is nearly complete. Once it's activated, we'll be able to send warning signals instantly across the entire galaxy, regardless of distance or interference." Project Lighthouse was humanity's answer to the ancient machines. Greatest advantage? Their ability to coordinate attacks across vast distances without any detectable communication system. The dimensional beacon would allow the defenders to match that capability. A soft chime indicated that the council meeting was about to begin. Elena and her companions made their way to the main conference chamber, where representatives from over 200 species were gathering. The chamber had been redesigned since the revelation, with humanity's seat moved from the back row to a position of prominence at the center. As Elena took her place, she reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she had been an ignored ambassador representing a supposedly minor species. Now, she was one of the most powerful individuals in the galaxy, helping to coordinate the defense of billions of worlds. Ambassador Kree called the meeting to order. The Centauran had been elected as the new council president, partly because of his species' reputation for fairness and partly because he had been one of the first to accept humanity's new role. "Fellow council members," Kree began, "we gather today to review our progress in preparing for the ancient machine offensive. Ambassador Vasquez will provide the security briefing. Elena stood and activated the main display. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared, showing the current positions of all known threats and defensive assets. Red dots marked ancient machine incursions that had been detected and neutralized. Blue areas showed the coverage of the defensive network. Over the past 6 months, we have successfully intercepted and destroyed 47 ancient machine units, Elena reported. Our intelligence suggests that these were primarily reconnaissance forces, testing our defenses and gathering information about current galactic civilization. She touched a control, and the display zoomed in on specific sectors. The pattern of their probes indicates that the main assault will likely begin in the Sagittarius Arm, approximately 18 months from now. This gives us time to complete our defensive preparations, but not much time. Ambassador Thrak raised one of his 4 hands. What can my people do to help? The Korathi Empire places all of our resources at humanity's disposal. Elena smiled at the Korathi's complete change in attitude. We need your industrial capacity focused on building the new quantum-enhanced weapons platforms. The blueprints have already been transmitted to your engineers. Similar offers of support came from representatives across the chamber. The Zephyrians offered their crystal growth technology for building sensor networks. The Aquatic Federation volunteered their worlds as staging areas for refugee populations. The Silicon Collective promised to dedicate their computing power to analyzing ancient machine behavior patterns. As the meeting progressed, Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what she had dreamed of during those frustrating years, when humanity was ignored and dismissed. Not domination or control, but true cooperation in the face of a common threat. Dr. Kim stood to give her technical briefing. The good news is that our defensive preparations are ahead of schedule. The bad news is that our latest intelligence suggests the ancient machines have been preparing too. She activated a new display showing deep space sensor readings. We've detected energy signatures in the void between galaxies that match ancient machine technology. The force that's coming is larger than any previous wave, much larger. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Even with all their preparations, even with the combined might of the galaxy's civilizations, they might still not be enough. But then she looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from hundreds of species. Beings who had been enemies 6 months ago were now working together with desperate determination. Ancient civilizations were sharing their most closely guarded secrets. Proud warriors were accepting guidance from former outcasts. We'll be ready, Elena said, her voice carrying a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Humanity didn't spend 2 centuries hiding just to fail when it mattered. Admiral Chun stood beside her. The ancient machines are programmed to expect a galaxy divided by warfare and suspicion. They're not prepared for what they're going to find. A united civilization with technology they can't understand and determination they can't break. Elena nodded and looked out through the chamber's viewport at the massive fleet formations. Training in the distance. Human ships phased through space alongside alien vessels of every conceivable design. Crews that spoke 100 different languages worked together with seamless coordination. The revelation of humanity's true power had changed everything, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of creating a new empire or hierarchy, it had forced the galaxy to grow up. The petty conflicts and territorial disputes that had seemed so important were now forgotten in the face of a threat that made such concerns meaningless. The ancient machines think they're coming to destroy a primitive, divided galaxy, Elena said to the assembled representatives. Instead, they're going to discover that this galaxy has guardians. And those guardians are no longer hiding in the shadows. She gestured toward the viewport where the combined fleet continued its training exercises. Let them come. We'll show them what happens when the galaxy stands together. As the meeting concluded and the representatives dispersed to continue their preparations, Elena remained at the viewport watching the ships. In 18 months, those vessels would face an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations across millions of years. But for the first time since learning about the ancient threat, Elena felt genuinely confident about the outcome. The galaxy had finally learned what humanity had always known, that the greatest weapon wasn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield. It was the willingness to stand together when everything was at stake. And now, finally, the galaxy was ready to fight as one.